Coming up in this episode of PWD Allies podcast.
You never really give up this desire or this need to protect your child. You know, it certainly would be different if he was typical, didn't have the disabilities and he could manage his own life. Okay, cool. I know you can take care of yourself. Now he's going to be dependent on others to take care of him.
PWD Allies, the best disability podcast in Canada. Starring your hosts, Brent Frain. And as always, his producer and editor, Neil Matheson.
We're going to be talking with my next guest as a special needs dad and a disability advocate of a 17-year-old son who's got autism and who's also nonverbal. I'm going to be diving right into this with our guest.
And just full disclosure too, John, I met you through Podmatch. I'm a newbie. I'm a newbie to Podmatch, but I think it's kind of a neat service because it's kind of like a dating site for podcasters where you can line up guests. And so it's kind of a really cool thing, and you are the first guest to come on through that service, and I have a couple others. I have a couple others lined up, but you are the first, and we should also say that you're in the States, in Chicago, and it's been a while since we've had somebody from the States, but welcome.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Yeah, great. And thank you very much. John Fela is joining me from Chicago, Illinois, in the United States of America. Welcome, John. And thanks for joining me on the PWD Allies podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to be here and looking forward to it.
Great. And so you're a disability advocate, and you have a son who's 17 years old with autism and is nonverbal. Can you tell me and our audience what is the journey with advocacy and dealing with your son who's has got autism? Just the story about your son and how you're coping with everything and from day-to-day life of the your advocacy versus actually and helping your son through his journey of life.
Absolutely. Well, I would tell you that my story begins and ends with my son. My son Chris, who actually, by the way, he just turned 18 in December, so little update
well,
there.
happy
But
birthday to your son.
absolutely, thank you. And Chris actually, so Chris is fairly severe autism. I think sometimes they would consider that like a level 3 for those who use that kind of scale, and nonverbal, which basically means he'll never be independent. Currently, he actually resides at a residential facility in a therapeutic day school in Wichita, Kansas, because his public high school here in the Chicago area couldn't meet his needs. So we had to make the decision, his birth mom and I, who I'm actually divorced from, and now I'm remarried. But we had to make that choice. And so we made that choice back in 2024. And he won't be there forever. It's just to finish up some schooling. So, but my advocacy journey really started with my son. And there are a lot of ways that I can go with my story in terms of what influenced me and what kind of nudged me and pushed me, quite honestly, in that direction. But I would tell you it really began with realizing when my son was still very young, first of all, how difficult this road is, but also too how much of an island that his birth mom and I, when we were married, were on, because we had family, we had friends, but we didn't really have anyone who understood what we were going through. And even though in my previous life I was an educator, she's still an educator as well. It was our first child, and we just didn't know what we didn't know, right? And so it became difficult because we didn't have a big support network. And then on top of that, I had experiences early on in my journey where I really learned that you know, uh, there's a specific way that men and dads relate and respond to this type of a situation. And what I saw from my son's mom, my ex, was, she responded to things in a certain way. Certainly, she was a great mom, still is a great mom.
Mm.
But it was very much about me kind of figuring out what my role was because she was the one who really always handled all of the
Yeah.
appointments and finding the therapist and managing the schedule. And that was fine. And she was okay with that. And so was I. But at the same time, I began to feel a little bit of guilt, felt a little bit of insecurity, and really defeatism because I said to myself, what do I really do? What do I really give? Right? Most men in my situation, and this is, these are opinions that I get from families all over, moms and dads. Many times men will throw themselves into their work, into their career. Let's make as much money as we can to pay for those things, and that's fine. But I couldn't do that. I was living on a teacher's salary, and technically my son's mom always made more money than me. So what did I do? Well, that along with the experience of not really having any community and wanting that support, I kind of intentionally pushed myself into this world of advocacy. And to be perfectly honest, it started out very small. It really started out with me trying to do some meetups for special needs dads in my community. Some of those are still going today, but then I was able to connect with other groups and other organizations that did those things locally and also around the US. And then I got involved with organizations, specifically faith-based disability organizations, where I started doing writing and speaking for them. And those are some of the conferences and things that I speak at around the country and folks I'm involved with. And of course, now I'm happy to say that I'm also a first-time author. So that's
That's
great.
cool.
So
Oh, awesome.
I wanted
thank you.
sorry, I wanted to stop you there because I do know that you were involved with the Joni Eareckson Christian ministry,
Oh, yes.
and I have to say, as a sidebar or a side note, that my first wife, she was in a wheelchair. She had arthrogryposis, so she was born with her disability, and when we first had her son, my wife was a big fan of Joni Eareckson, and she wrote Joni Eareckson a couple letters at least. Like I said, a pretty big fan. So and I just wanted to kind of mention. I mean, you can still talk about your story, but I just wanted to also say that I've always thought of kind of disability and faith is kind of connected in the way that you're I think God uses disability as a way of kind of almost humbling you. like
Yeah.
I wrote my own book, Daddy Bent Legs, and it's my life story, and that's one of the things that I put in my book is that my disability had a way of keeping me honest, like keep like knocks you down a couple pegs, and keeps you humble. And,
Oh, for sure.
And I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that or not, or yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really important topic, and it's a hot topic, and I'll tell you why. Because um, disability ministry is, in my opinion, the next big wave in the church, regardless of size of the church or denomination. Disability ministry, I think, is the next thing that's really going to be at the forefront of everybody. Why? Because disability numbers are increasing, and whatever argument you want to make as to why, the fact is they're increasing. However, there are studies done, and there are lots of great ministries and organizations, even outside of Joni and Friends, that does this work that I work with. But there are studies done that show it's essentially 1 in 10. It's 1 in 10 churches, at least in the US, that have anything formal for disability ministry. Now, why is that important? Because when you look at an organization like Joni and Friends, it is Johnny, by the way. I hate to correct you, but most people say Joni. It's actually
Oh,
Johnny.
sorry. Yeah, sorry about
But
that.
no, no,
Yeah.
no offense, no big deal. But when people look at an organization like that, and to be fair, listen, um, Johnny and Friends blessed me even before I was working for them as a family with a child with a disability, one of the great things they do are these retreats for families all around the U.S. And they do have some international ones. They're not in every country yet, but they are growing and spreading. And it's a way for families to have the experience of a vacation like any normal family, but with support for their children, whatever age or condition with a disability. So I can tell you that those retreats, both as a family being served and then also serving at them, blessed me in ways that I can't even begin to list here. But
Oh,
here's the problem though. The problem is that when we think about disability ministry, most folks, whether it's the volunteers that we employ or that come to our events and that type of thing, whether it's people who even work on staff or even families that are served, many times disability ministry gets relegated to an event or a thing. Like, people love the Tim Tebow Night to Shine, for example. I volunteered at those too. That's a wonderful concept. It's a wonderful thing. But here's the problem. Most families, and I'm going to go back to that 1 in 10 churches point. Most families do not have a church they can be engaged with on Sundays. They may have organizations like Joni and Friends that are doing events, which is great, or let's say a church that hosts a night to shine or a prom or a whatever social event. That's all great. We need that.
mhm.
But the bigger problem is that we need a place for families just like mine, for kids just like mine, to have a place at a church on a Sunday. And unfortunately, most churches are still struggling with understanding. First of all, as I like to always put it, it's an obligation and an opportunity, right? What churches fail to like, when you present this idea to them, they think that you're trying to make them do something that doesn't apply to them or makes no sense. And I remind them, I'm like, listen, this is scriptural. This is biblical. If I have a conversation with you as a church, which I still, that was my main job with Joni and Friends, actually. And now, even though I'm not with them anymore, I still do that work as part of my advocacy and consulting. But, we always start the conversation with, look, this is biblical. It is biblical that everyone should have a place in your church, in your community, as part of the body of Christ, right? And so we have to have them wrap their minds around that and their hearts around it, quite honestly, so that it's kind of instilled into the regular life and flow and DNA of the church. And then, the opportunity is families like mine want to have a part in a community like that, in a congregation, but those families also want to give back too. Those families also want to volunteer. And even the person with the disability frequently wants to volunteer. And that's what a lot of churches miss, is that just because they have a disability doesn't mean that it's just about, oh my goodness, we have to think about their care the whole time. No, sometimes it might just be an issue of they may need a little support in some area, but they can also be a vibrant contributing member of the church as well.
Yeah.
I'm doing the bookkeeping at my church now.
Oh yeah. Oh, great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a place of belonging, of going to, of just not even just the acceptance, but it's a place of just familiarization, and just knowing that other people with disabilities with or maybe as allies who have disabilities, and they can just kind of go to and seek different supports or ideas, suggestions, and just that community feel, John. And
The community support, I think,
yeah.
is a big piece.
It's very important.
And one of the things, again, I snooped a little bit on a couple of your past videos, and it struck me, one of the things you said was, because your son is nonverbal, your son doesn't have any friends, basically, right? That you made that comment, and it kind of made me really pause for a second, because I'm like, wow, that is a really kind of stunning statement. I mean, it makes sense, but it's still, to hear it out loud, it's like, wow, and you made the point that that's a kind of a good role for the church to step in that place and be that friend, be that support, because your son as a nonverbal adult doesn't have that support network.
Mhm.
Yes, and that is something that, to be perfectly honest with you, is something very near to my heart, that breaks my heart, and also is a real fear. And I'll tell you why. Because, my son is an only child. His mom is an only child. I'm an only child. Even though I'm remarried, we don't know that there might be other kids involved at some point. We don't know. But essentially, the point is that at some point, everybody that he knows that has taken care of him at some point in his life are either going to need to be taken care of themselves,
Hmm.
or will just physically not be here. Who will be his community? Who will be the
Yeah.
people that will step in and say, happy birthday, give him a hug, love you, whatever that needs to be. And that can be the church and families like mine. Again, even when, because
Mhm.
the kind of the default with a family like mine is that when there are siblings, when there are what we would refer to as typical siblings, the parents usually will have a conversation, okay, Joe, Jane, whatever, when we're gone, I need you to step in and take care of your brother, sister, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the thing. What if there are no siblings, or what if the siblings can't, or unfortunately won't and don't want to do that,
Mhm.
right? So again, this is that opportunity part to bless families just like mine, struggling with, being able to make sure that their child, as an adult, once they're older, old enough, that they have those supports, that they have that community kind of built in. Because the reality is that my son has default friends. He has default friends at school, the kids he goes to school with, or adults rather, or who will be in his day programs, or, if he volunteers or has a little job somewhere, wherever he's living. Yeah, and those are just the people in his space. Nobody is calling him up and saying, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" Nobody is
Yeah.
calling him up and
All right.
saying, let's go do something, or whatever that is. He's never going to get married. He's never going to have his own kids. So
Hmm.
again, where is the community coming from? And again, the
Mhm.
church has an obligation and an opportunity. They can be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's definitely. I like how you worded that. It's just that feeling of belonging, of just the that community belonging feeling of just acceptance of who they are, and just being there. And family can not just be their family; it can be the church or the community around them, and just bringing them in and saying, how are you, and and just treating them for who they are, not their disability, of being who they are, and just accepting them for who they are.
Hmm.
And I think that's what a lot of people go through too. Is that community feeling, like if they're on like Facebook, or just that community gathering, and just interacting with people the best way they can, and but being there in person, like within a community setting. I love your advocacy, your story of just going through the journey of being with your son, and the love. I can tell the love is so strong, John, and that's awesome.
I think what faith is to me too is it's reassuring to know that I don't have to take
Hmm.
everything on myself, that I can just say, you know what, God's got this. you
Yeah.
know, like it's very freeing to know that you have an advocate in your corner, that no matter what's going on, God's got it all under control, even when it looks like it's totally messed up. Like a lot of things in the world today look pretty messed up, right?
Yeah.
but you can know with confidence. You can say, God's got this. God's sorting it out, and that's very comforting for me anyway, to know that, right?
Well, that's what I
Yeah.
mean when I say, like John, like your love is there for your community, for your son, and just for the whole well-being of all your advocacy, and I can tell your whole heart is right in there at all, and that's awesome. And and I think a lot of people will probably echo what you're saying, and what they could probably really resonate with just everything that you're describing, the journey through your advocacy, and your son's journey through life. And I mean, growing up myself, and being I was isolated for a while in school, and put into another room of, well, just the acceptance. Well, children in the class, they're not going to accept. I mean, you're learning to touch type, Brent. I mean, because I couldn't write fast enough, so I was touch typing, and they said, well, we slow down the class if we put you in there. And so it was about acceptance, and I finally I put my foot down, John, and I said, well, no, I want to be with my peers,
Yeah.
and they all started. I could hear them from a distance. We want Brent back in the class, and they were all egging on the teacher, and the teacher was frustrated because the teacher just felt that it was better that I was away, and I didn't want to, and they didn't want me to be. So, and just that feeling of acceptance and how you described about just that community feeling, the acceptance of belonging, right? Yeah. So I'm following right along with you, just echoing everything.
That's what I always found is that, I don't know if I could go back to when I was like 10 years old or whatever,
Hmm.
and then, or maybe a bit older, but, I would walk through, say a shopping mall or something on crutches, and, kids would stop me and say, oh, why do you have those sticks? Just,
Oh.
and they were just like genuinely curious, like, why do you use those sticks, right? And of course, you would want to answer them, but then you'd have adults who should know better. Adults would say like more kind of rude, pointed comment is like, "What's wrong with you?" Like,
Right.
I don't know how many times, like not so much anymore, but particularly like way back in the day, I would get so many adults with some variation of "What's wrong with you?" and I'd be thinking to myself like, "Okay, I don't know what's wrong with you."
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's
Yeah.
so it's just funny to me how somehow younger kids seem to have more of a sensibility almost than adults do. They're not as like willing to offend. I don't know what the right word is, but I don't
Maybe
know what your
more.
comment on that is, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one big thing for me too, that I'm concerned about, especially even though my son is technically an adult now, the fact is that because of his disability, he just doesn't profile the same way, right? So again,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a physical disability, but it's a developmental cognitive one.
Hmm.
So, any interaction that someone has with them, whether they're a child, adult, whatever, within 30 seconds, they're going to know, okay,
Yeah.
something's different here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I will say that luckily, in my experience, since my son was a young child and I spent all of the days taking him out in public to the stores and the parks and
Hmm.
every other thing, for the most part, we really didn't have too many bad encounters. We had a few.
Mm-hmm.
We had a few. And again, what I think is the really difficult thing emotionally for me as a parent to grasp is the fact that you never know when it's going to come or where it's going to come from,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because we've had, I remember my son, and luckily I wasn't there, but my his mom and his grandma were out at a restaurant one time that they enjoyed, and he was always excited about the food, and he was young, and he's always had a lot of energy, but when he was young he had a lot of energy,
Oh, yeah.
and he let you know that he was excited to be
Yeah.
there and hooting and hollering and whatever. And there was an older couple, and the husband, turned around and made some snarky comments about,
Oh,
well, why, if he's got these issues, why do you take him out in public and this kind of thing? And it's like, you
wow.
know,
Oh,
you're looking at two people that in any other context they would be a kindly older couple, maybe grandparents themselves probably, but in that moment they absolutely judged my child and basically said he shouldn't be allowed outside, right?
oh,
And so, even though there's only been maybe, I could count them on one hand how many experiences we've had like that, but regardless, you never know when it's going to come. And
mm,
even though he's an adult now, that doesn't mean that, you could have a 5-year-old kid come up to him and be like, what's your deal? What's your problem? Right? Because
mhm.
and to be fair, some of them may just be genuinely curious and just like, I don't understand why you're like this. But the problem then becomes, okay, yes, he's an adult, but as a parent in this role, in this kind of a relationship, you never really give up this desire or this need to protect your child, right? You'll always have it. And I think any parent does, but it certainly would be different if he was typical, didn't have the disabilities, and he could manage his own life. Okay, cool. I know you can take care of yourself. Now he's going to be dependent on others to take care of him. So there's the issue of how the world will treat him. But then, of course, there's the issue of how the people who will take care of him will actually take care of him. Will they do a good job? Will they actually have their heart in it? And or will there be, and I hate to use the word abuse, but I mean abuse does happen in this world. But even if it's not genuine abuse of some kind, is it neglect? Is it ignorance? Is it, I'm not gonna, spend too much time or, waste too much time with you kind of a thing. And that's a fear that all families have, regardless of whether there's other support in the family with the siblings, etc. You're always concerned. Like that is one of the scariest things about looking at long-term care, residential programs, all of that is the actual quality of the staff, of the support staff and care staff, and the fact that there's a lot of turnover in that world, in that industry. Most people get burned out very quickly. You get new people all the time. It's hard to keep good people around because of how challenging it is. So these are all things that a family like mine has to kind of factor in to say, okay, we're going to try to make the best life for you, but we even have to get so far detailed as looking at where you're living, who's employed there, what is the care like, and stay on top of that as much as possible. But at some point, we will have to surrender and give it to God and say, we're going home. We're going home. We're not going to be here. But God, I need to make sure that my child is taken care of.
You know what, Brent? We've reached the end of the interview
already.
But this was fun. This was fun.
How
John.
time flies by. I mean, it always flies by so fast. And
I was glad to be here for sure.
yeah, and anytime, I would love to have you come back on again. And I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in today to PWD Allies podcast. Please share, like, and subscribe. If you like the content, just click the button below there in the comment section and definitely give us a like. Thank you, and take care.
And throw us a coffee. Throw us a coffee.
Throw us a coffee. Well, I got a lot of coffee here, John. I got the PWD Allies mug.
Love it.